He took my piece of paper and went, bad idea, next. And I was like, 6 months of my time. And then the other mastermind members concurred. They were like, yeah, this is not the thing for you, Shannon. This is not, yes, can you make money? Yes, you have the Midas touch. You can make money with anything you touch. This is not it.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hey, real quick before we get started, first of all, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us on the show and for listening. To all my loyal listeners, I really appreciate you, continuing to listen and support the show. If you can go on to iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you listen and subscribe to the show, that would be fantastic. Spread the word too. I'd love to, have this reach more and more people. So if you could share it on social media or and just talk about it to other people, that would be fantastic. And the last thing is if you can go onto iTunes and give us a rating review, hopefully 5 stars, that would be great as well. It just helps us spread the word more, and it helps us continue to get really good guests on the show. We've had some fantastic guests, and I just want to be able to continue to bring fantastic value to you. Go onto our Facebook page too, Pillars of Wealth Facebook page, and I'd like to hear from you as a listener of what you're doing in business, what you've got going on, what you are maybe struggling with or being successful with, and then what we can do on the show to help push you to that next level. Maybe questions we can ask our guests, maybe guests that we can get on the show to talk about certain topics, certain things that are really you're needing some extra support with. So provide for us some feedback on Facebook, and you can also share this out on social media. That would be fantastic as well. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being a either new listener or a loyal listener. I definitely appreciate it, and we will get started with the show. Hey, welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me today, I've got Shanyn Stewart. I'm excited to have Shanyn on. Shanyn, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, Shanyn is an accountant, but she's not your typical accountant. She's a serial entrepreneur and fearless single mom who has a military background in tactical training. And is not afraid to stand up to anyone, including the IRS. She's a gun-toting libertarian, proactive tax strategist. Shanyn has built a team of tax and financial experts to assist clients in legal tax avoidance. There's so much more to your background and kind of your story. You're a former American Baptist pastor, and you own Gunpowder Lace, a concealment garment and holster company for women. So explain this stuff to me, because this is fascinating. You've got a lot of different things going on and background, and it sounds like you're kind of a badass.
Thank you. Actually, they when I get introduced at public speaking, they call me the gun-toting tax strategist. So, so I do tend to be a little bit rough around the edges. So I'm not your typical accountant. A lot of accountants are slow to change and they do business the same way every year. I tend to be very proactive. So, and that gets me into some situations sometimes because, as an American Baptist pastor, they didn't really like that. They didn't like the fact that I was so opinionated and kind of walked outside the box of what the norm would say. But it served me well from that standpoint, because sometimes we have to look outside the box to find the answers to solutions that we're struggling with.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just sometimes, very often we do, especially with taxes. I feel like it's not just that black and white. There's a lot of interpretation into taxes. So having somebody that's willing to kind of look all directions is definitely beneficial.
I think you're right. I think one of the things that we find in our profession, so I happen to be an entrepreneur who happens to make money. One of the ways is as a tax strategist and owning a full service tax practice. But as an entrepreneur, we actually have to look at things different. I always say to my staff, we had a staff meeting this morning, and a question was posed to me, and I said, ask a different question. Like, don't ask the same question over and over. So when you're dealing with something, sometimes we get stuck in our paradigm and we're only thinking the way that we've always thought. And we don't think that there could be a different question to be asked. And so sometimes when we ask a different question, we get a different answer and then can take a different path with our solution.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You just said it right there. I mean, we get stuck in our paradigm, and you have to always kind of shift that paradigm and get out of it and feel uncomfortable, and ask different questions. I really like that. You said that, ask different questions. So important. Tell me about this other company. I want to know.
Yeah. So I have another company called Gunpowder Lace, and we do concealment garments and holsters for women. So the website's gunpowderandlace.com. And basically we have created a line of lingerie that has holsters built in it so that you can carry and be protected and still be feminine and feel like a woman. A lot of the holsters that are in the market are made technically for men, and they're uncomfortable for women. But it was actually born out of a situation where my best friend is a colonel in the Air Force, and I have another best friend who's an air marshal. And we were sitting around the kitchen table one day, and we were like, how do you carry your gun? I don't know. How do you carry yours? Well, we don't want to carry it in our purse. And so we started drawing on a piece of paper. And then the next day we found ourselves at the fabric store, and we had sewing machines out, and we just had a girls' weekend, and we started mocking up all of these garments. Well, 13 patents later, we have a line of lingerie that actually, and there are other things in the marketplace. We sell mostly to government, officers, things of that nature. We do a little bit of direct-to-consumer marketing as well, but it was a hobby that became, another stream of income. And I think that's so important as entrepreneurs, that we have multiple streams of income, that we actually are looking at different ways that we can be in different industries. As the economy and things of that nature change, we can pivot very quickly so that our cash flow stays consistent.
Yeah, definitely. So it's hilarious because it's like this kind of like masculine, like tough person thing, and you're doing the totally girly thing. Well, I shouldn't say girly, but you're doing the feminine thing of like getting these sewing machines out and doing this, but you're sewing it for guns.
Yeah, definitely. Because here's the thing: a lot of times I think this for men and women, that oftentimes we get uncomfortable with something and we don't try something new because it feels very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So for instance, with a woman, and oftentimes they don't want to carry a firearm because they're scared of it. So if we can kind of take down that barrier of fear. So I've always been the kind of person that if something scared me, I did it anyways. Like I was scared a couple years ago of going scuba diving. And I remember like, okay, I've got to go do this because it actually makes me feel very uncomfortable. And so I want to, push myself to that point of being uncomfortable, because that's where we grow. At that other side of fear is the growth, and so as an entrepreneur, I always take a look at those things that kind of give me a barrier and think, okay, I've got to push through it because on the other side of there is my growth.
Is it just that mindset of I want to grow because I see that as a barrier, or is there any other strategies you use to be able to push beyond kind of that fear to get yourself to be able to do something?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that when I look at it, I call it the terror barrier. And oftentimes as an entrepreneur, sometimes we get stuck in our businesses, and we keep like bumping up against the same brick wall all the time.
Yeah.
And really, if we take an honest look at it, it's that terror barrier, it's that fear barrier. And we may not want to call it that, but that's what the reality of it is. So if we're in our business and we're coming up against something that keeps repeating itself, it keeps manifesting in our business, then we have to take a good look at it and find out is Is it our paradigm? Is it our, are we fearful of something? Are we afraid of success? Are we afraid of failure? Because it's on the other side of identifying what's stopping us that we're going to grow and expand ourselves and our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Let's get to some kind of tax questions. What most of us that are listening here are real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and obviously a big portion of our expenses are our taxes. So, what can entrepreneurs, do to be prepared? In order to best serve like our tax situations? What are some like key ingredients for that?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of is the fact that if we're real estate investors, and this is one of our passive things that we're doing, so we have our W-2, and then we're doing some real estate investing as well. This is actually a business, and it should be treated as such. So it's not something that you carry in your box of receipts at the end of the year and you set it on your tax professional's desk, and they're supposed to then do what? Record history. That's all they can do. They're just historians, right? So basically, when I talk to individuals, I always tell them, let's write the history. Let's actually be proactive in our planning. Let's actually meet during the year and actually proactively plan how we're going to write history together. And I think that it's very important to have a trusted professional. Oftentimes, individuals think they can go things on their own, and especially with the new tax law changes. I mean, we just completely overhauled our whole tax law system. And so you're not going to have all the answers. And your tax professional may not have all the answers, because the average tax professional, be it a CPA or an enrolled agent, their job is to complete for you an accurate tax return. That's a full-time job. Their job is to keep you in compliance. That's a full-time job. Alongside that, oftentimes is a tax strategist whose job is to actually help you to proactively plan what's going to happen with your current holdings and what the future holds. So a tax strategist also comes in and does planning, kind of like a concierge CFO, and sits alongside you and says, okay, what's the plan for the year? Oh, we're gonna get 2 new properties, or we're gonna dispose of 2 properties. What do we do with that? What's the strategy before we actually make the decisions?
Yeah, that and why, like, what is the benefit of doing that versus just, like you said, just putting your receipts on their desk and say, hey, here you go? What are some advantages that we can?
So oftentimes what happens if we're coming into December and we've had a really great year and we have a profit, and there are things that we need to purchase, like vehicles and equipment and so forth. If we don't know that, if we haven't figured that out until April 15th, that time has already passed and the calendar year is already closed. So we can't actually buy the things that we need and dispose of that and get that off the profit and loss into the, from the income side to the expense side. So we've lost that deduction. There's also something, we can always talk about, like, do you have the right entity? That's a huge thing. But one of the things I see that real estate investors miss a lot is something called cost segregation studies. So that's one of the things that we proactively do with a lot of our clients is to actually bring in an outside firm to do a cost segregation study so that we're able to actually increase our depreciation and actually increase cash flow and reduce taxation in the first 1 to 5 years of owning a property. So unless we're doing that planning, we can't, once that tax year closes, it's very hard to go back and do anything from that standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So why is it important for an accountant to call business owners out, and be the one that provides that kind of that tough love to them?
Well, first of all, I don't think it happens enough. I mean, I have a lot of tax professional friends, and I have a lot on my staff, and I definitely have a different personality than most of them. Most of them aren't comfortable with what I call truth in love, to speak out that truth, because Their job in their mind is to just record the history, fill in the boxes, what's happened, and get that on a complete tax return. So you really need to oftentimes have somebody on your team that can look at you and say, this is not a good idea. I'll give you an example. I was working with a gentleman who's a certified financial planner in Texas yesterday, and we're having this conversation, and he wants to move to a new building. And I said to him, it's not the right move. It's not, do you have the money? Yes, but you're going to go into a 10-year lease when you should be buying a building, but we're 3 years from buying the building. Like, I had to speak something very difficult to him. He didn't want to hear it at first. He was very resistant to it. But when I laid out those numbers, he was like, you know what, I'm glad you said that to me. I was just about to make a very huge mistake in my business. And I'm glad that you had the knowledge to actually bring it to the forefront and actually tell me something I didn't want to hear, because he said, everyone on my team is agreeing with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's nice to have someone that actually is able to stand up to that and kind of not necessarily fight back, but make that, knowledgeable statement that, like, this isn't the right move.
Well, and I asked him a different question.
Yeah.
I started by asking different questions of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And understanding, and I've been doing this for almost 25 years. So understanding the cycles that we're in as well from an economic standpoint is very important. And so when we're looking at being entrepreneurs, be it real estate or anything else, it's really important to have someone on your team that understands cycles in economic cycles and has weathered them as well. Because a lot of younger individuals, I have a couple of young real estate professionals, and I mean, one of my gentlemen has $1 million worth of properties in his portfolio, and he's never weathered a 2008, 2009. So we've been talking a lot about how do we get lean in our life? Like, what happens if there's another 2008, 2009? What's our game plan? Not panic. Because if you remember that real estate crisis then, there was a lot of people who didn't have reserves, who weren't real lean, who didn't know how to survive that downturn. And that's where we had a lot of foreclosures and we had a lot of properties that came up for sale. Now when I'm looking at building my real estate portfolio, I'm looking for blood in the streets. That's where I'm going to go in and make my purchases. However, if we have those properties in our portfolio, we need to know that we can weather those storms and what's the game plan. And so that's part of proactive planning, tax planning, financial planning, and the such.
So you just mentioned something that's close to a lot of my listeners, what's on their minds right now. And we're seeing obviously a real estate market that's probably very hot. That might be getting to be closer to the top. And they're worried about, okay, now if I buy a property now, it cash flows, but things go wrong, what's going to happen? And you've mentioned a couple things about having reserves and, being set up right, but what are maybe 3 to 5 key factors or key things that we can do as real estate investors to make sure we can weather a 2008, 2009 again?
Well, I think it goes back to having a very lean structure and organization. So oftentimes when we have a lot of cash flow, we rise to that standard of living. That's just human nature. Mm. So remembering that your real estate business is separate from your life that you lead if you're like a W-2 employee as well. I always tell people that they're completely separate entities and different business silos in your mind. So the money that you have coming through that rental property or those rental properties need to be funneled back into the property. So you don't just necessarily, if you have $500 of cash flow that flows through, you just take that onto your personal side and spend it. You actually need to be putting it back into the business, if that's paying down mortgages, if it's buying other properties, that type of thing. So you have 2 separate silos when we're talking about real estate. Another thing is when we're acquiring these properties, we want to make sure that we have a good ROI and good cash flow to begin with. We want to make sure that that cash flow, even if we don't have 100% occupancy, let's say for instance, we go down to a 60% occupancy, that we're still able to maintain that property from that standpoint. You know, you want to look at the metrics of the worst case scenario of, you know, what if I could not rent my property for 6 months, does the property still sustain itself? So those are the hard questions you have to ask when you're looking at your investing in real estate. Also, what can I do to actually increase my cash flow right now and reduce my taxation? So cost segregation study is going to actually reduce your overall taxation in years. You're going to get the biggest benefit in year 1, but all the way through year 5. And can I take those tax savings and pay down the mortgage or buy another property? So again, it all goes down to that planning of, you know, and looking at the worst case scenario. Because one of the things I see a lot in the 2008 and 9, I remember that a lot of my real estate investors were leveraged to the hilt. They had a lot of leverage. And because here's the thing, debt assumes that tomorrow is going to be better than today. So you've got to make sure that if you take debt, if you take leverage on that property, on that portfolio, that you actually have the cash flow, even at a reduced amount, to sustain that.
Yeah, I hear so many people, you know, I don't, on online, on forums, on wherever, meetings, and they always talk about maximizing your leverage and, you know, making sure that you pull out everything, essentially, all the equity in order to buy more properties. And I shudder when I hear that, because I just think, man, that's exactly what these investors that got in trouble were doing in 05 and 06. 07 is they're pulling out all their equity and then some at that time. Now we're a little more kind of conservative, but I don't even, you know, I see these people pulling out these loans for more than what they would buy the property for. And you just go, wow, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good strategy to me. When I look at my properties leveraged at, you know, like 50%, it feel a lot better at the end of the day.
Well, and I think that's a good rule of thumb, that everything, I mean, so if you have a property that's leveraged more than 50%, then that needs to be an area of concern, that you're paying down that debt.
Yeah. Hey, I'm super excited to announce the North Star Real Estate Conference that I am putting together along with a few other friends, and we are expecting to have a great crowd there. This is going to be September 20th and 21st in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities area. And hey, it'll still be warm, and we're going to have a ton of great speakers there. We're going to have some motivational speakers. We're expecting to have speakers talking about a lot of different commercial real estate topics, multifamily and commercial real estate. So we want you there. We would love to have a great crowd there. We would love to have you there. And the cool thing with this conference is all the profits are going to benefit charity. They're going to benefit Junior Achievement specifically, who they serve underserved youth, and they bring financial education to them. They not only teach financial education, but they teach the kids how to be entrepreneurs, how to be business leaders, and how to really do fantastic things after they're out of school and moving on. So that's who we're going to be benefiting. We're going to also have a charity gala. It's going to be a fun event, and I'd love to have you attend. So again, it's called the North Star Real Estate Conference. Check it out. We've got links that we'll put on the show notes. We would love to have you there. We'd love to have you attend. Speaker lineup is coming, and that'll be announced shortly. We do have a few speakers already lined up, so you'll be able to see that. We've got Trevor McGregor will be our keynote speaker. He's a master platinum coach. So you're going to love this event. We are going to just have a ton of fun and learn a bunch, and also benefit a great organization as well. I will see you there. Check out our show notes for the links. So you were a you're a former American Baptist pastor. And so I'm assuming, you still, when you're in your business, you've got your faith still. So how does your faith impact your business, and how do you relate your faith to your business?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, I was a former pastor for 8 years, pastored in a church. You know, one of the things, I think I can look at things with a different perspective, because I honestly think that God is in control. And so whenever we go through any type of situation, I still believe that there is a higher being, a higher source that's always in control, looking out for our good. So when I work with individuals, I try to instill that peace. Like, 2008 and 9 was a really hard time for a lot of individuals. And I don't know what people do without faith, but we also know, I also think about faith without good works, they say is dead. So when I work with individuals and we talk a lot about mindset, I talk a lot about heart issues, not from a religious or Christian standpoint, because I have a Buddhist on my staff, I have a Muslim on my staff. I look at it from the standpoint of that there's truth in love, and that oftentimes when people come to me and they're having issues in their business, then I'm going to find that there's issues in their personal life, and it all boils down to heart issues. And so oftentimes we have to take care of mindset and heart issues before we can get into like the nitty gritty of, our cash flow issues or our IRS issues.
Well, and, you mentioned having a Buddhist and a Muslim on your staff, and it's, whether you're Christian or whatever you are, to me, it's the same, a lot of the same philosophies. It's like you said, it's that mindset and that heart issue that you've got to, be able to fix and be able to make right first. And that's what we talk about so often. And it's not necessarily, necessarily a religious thing, but yeah, that's it's definitely an important part of your business.
Well, and I think one of the things, like my motto and just my life in general, is never withhold good when it's in your power. And I think that if you live your life that way, regardless of what you do, things, it's funny how life happens and things like fall into place. There's those synchronicities, those things that if you're always doing good for other people, then that's what you get repaid back. And that can be across all religions. They have that philosophy,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So tell us about a mistake that you've made, and how have you learned and grown from that?
I make mistakes every day.
I'm sure we all do.
Isn't that the truth? So I think, one of my biggest business mistakes that I ever made, again, I think that comes back to my terror barrier and why I'm so hell-bent now on actually looking at everything that scares me and defeating it. So I know that there's been times in my business that I've had opportunity and I haven't taken it because I was scared. And I think it was more, not so much scared of failure, it was scared of the unknown. Sometimes we have, there's that saying, I think Martin Luther King Jr. said, you take the first step, you can't see the whole stairway. The stairway will appear as you take that first step. And I think that's one of the biggest things I learned early on. And actually I shouldn't say early on, it probably took me 10 years, maybe 15 years to realize that those fear barriers were keeping me from being my best self ever, not only in my business, but in my personal life. And so I think the thing that has been my biggest lesson is that when I can't see, because I'm a planner, and so when I can't see, I have to rely on my faith, or I also have to rely on what I call my mastermind. So I belong to several different mastermind groups, and I trust the power of a mastermind. So if I have a new business venture, because I have several businesses across several industries, I take it to my mastermind group and I trust their opinion. I go to a room full of entrepreneurs who have walked the talk and who are successful. And I say, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What are your thoughts? Last year and a half ago, I took an idea to my mastermind and I had laid it all out. I mean, I spent 6 months on this idea. And within 5 minutes, one of the gentlemen in the mastermind, he's a huge internet marketing guy. He took my piece of paper and went, bad idea, next. And I was like, 6 months of my time. And then the other mastermind members concurred. They were like, yeah, this is not the thing for you, Shanyn. This is not, yes, can you make money? Yes, you have the Midas touch. You can make money with anything you touch. This is not it. And my son, he's on the autism spectrum, but my children come with me to most of my business conferences. And he said, Mom, you took it on the chin. Like they were critical and brutal to you. And you were like, I understand. You were humble and you accepted their criticism and their guidance with humility. And you did what they said. Now, did I like what they said? Was I angry? Oh, I was irked. I was so upset. But I also trusted the power of their years of experience.
Yeah. And that's the power of having, a lot of us entrepreneurs try to do it alone, and don't want help from anybody, or don't think we need help from anybody, or don't know how to find that help. And that's the power of like a mastermind group like that. I'm a part of a few as well. And just having other people to be able to, kind of lean on for advice. And it's not always the advice that you want, like you said. But if you really think about what they're saying, they're looking at it from an outsider's look, and they can really be able to help you out, big time in making, had you just gone through with that, not brought that to your mastermind group, potentially that would have been a big mistake, a big distraction for you and your company, and wouldn't have got you to where you wanted to be.
Definitely. So yeah, there is power in surrounding yourself. And I think that's one thing I remember is that we become like the 5 people we surround ourselves with the most.
Yeah.
So pick your people wisely, and those that are not growing with you, you need to dismiss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that's trying to take it to the next level, what do you see from those who you work with and yourself? What do you see as maybe a couple key ingredients for those trying to take it to the next level?
I think getting to again, I'm going to go back to mindset. I think if you're dealing with head trash, you need to really take a close look at it. You need to get a therapist, or you need to have what's called a sozo, and you need to drill down on the things that are keeping you, impeding you from being your best self. I mean, our success and failure, I think 9 times out of 10 goes right down to mindset. The mindset, and then also treat that what you're doing as a business. Even if it's a hobby, if it's passive, real estate investing, treat it like a real business. Mm-hmm. Not just something that, you're doing on the side, because your side gig, just like my holsters, your side gig can become your real gig really quickly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You just spoke to my heart right there, because that's like the whole purpose of this show is to get real estate investors to stop thinking about it as like we're doing transactions. So many real estate investors just think about doing the deal. They don't think about actually we're operating a business, truly operating a business. If you're going to be successful, that's how you have to think of it. You're running a company. You're not just buying a piece of real estate.
Yes, that's so true. And there's lots of resources out there. I mean, there are strategic coaches, there are business coaches, there's, SCORE in your local area. You can just Google SCORE, and you've got this retired entrepreneurs and executives who will meet with you for free to help you get into the business mindset. So there's a lot of that you can do as you're growing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. SCORE is very powerful. I think a lot of people don't even know what it is. Like you said, it's for free, and there's people willing to meet with you, that are willing to work with you. They want to see you succeed. They're retired and they just want to give back, and they want more entrepreneurs to be successful.
Yes.
And how cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about some of your goals moving forward. What are you trying to accomplish, and how do you see yourself affecting people and your business growing?
Yeah, so we are a full service accounting tax side. We do, tactical training for taxes. We're a full service financial firm as well. We're growing that. We do a lot of resolution work. So I know there are a lot of people out there who have trouble with the IRS. And so that's something that we're passionate about fighting for them. So I just really, every day we show up just to serve our clients and to stand in the gap. Because oftentimes as entrepreneurs, it's a lonely space. It's really very lonely.
Yes.
And so I find that, as I said, we're a little bit outside the box. You're not going to get the typical CPA enrolled agent feel. You're going to get the fact that you've got a partner who's coming alongside you and who's going to fight the battle with you. And, I don't know if I think maybe it's my personality. I always feel like I have skin in the game. Like if you're my client, I'm the mama bear. And everyone stands back, to support you. And we want to see our clients be these raving successes. So I think that's where I see my business going, is just like, continuing to do that and just, partner with our clients, love on our clients, and help them be their best selves ever on all sides of, their life. So.
Awesome. Couple last questions before we wrap up. What's a favorite book, a business book that you really...
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
That's a classic. I love it.
Read it every year.
Yep. I read it pretty close to that same thing. Then last question before we wrap up. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
Well, mindset.
Yep.
Having the right mindset, getting rid of your head trash. I think the next pillar would be finding passive income. And then always act like a business owner.
Awesome. Last question. How can our listeners get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing and have a conversation and all that kind of stuff?
Definitely. So my website's advancedaccounting.com. On the right-hand side, you can actually click a button to have a free consultation. I'd love to visit for 15 minutes, look at your tax situation, and see if I can help you. If I can help you, I'll let you know. If I can't, if you've got the right person, then I'll give you that opinion as well. For speaking engagements, I can actually be found at ShanynStewart.com as well.
Perfect. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. Shanyn, I appreciate you joining us on the show. Tons of value. Really important. I think one of the most important things that you said among many are just be meeting with your tax accountant and don't just wait until it becomes history. We actually do it throughout the year and make a strategy of everything, because I would imagine that when you get somebody that gives you just their books versus actually strategize, there's really not much you can do to help their tax situation. And they end up probably paying a lot more than if they would have met with you, 2 or 3, maybe 4 times during the year and
Most definitely. Mm-hmm. Very correct.
Even though their bill from you might be a little higher, their probably bill from the IRS is way more.
Yeah, your tax strategist should pay for themselves.
Yeah.
You'll always pay less taxes than you'll pay to your tax strategist.
Yeah, perfect. Well, again, appreciate you joining us on the show. You have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you, you too.
Hey, special thanks to Shanyn Stewart. Appreciate her joining us on the show, spending time out of her day with us and giving us a lot of value. And obviously, coming as an accountant's standpoint, Shanyn brought a lot of different value that we need to be thinking of. And first of all, she talks about being proactive with your planning and having meetings with your accountants prior to just the end of the year or beyond the end of the year, and just having that one-time meeting. She talks about continuously meeting with your accountant and having a plan. She also talks about having a lean structure. Don't live lavishly. I think a lot of people right now, times are good. A lot of business owners, when times are good, start to live lavishly. And then what happens when all of a sudden lean times start to happen? They struggle to even maintain their business. So don't live lavishly. Make sure you're minding your business and minding your assets and your income. And the last thing she talks about is acting like a business owner all the time. You know, a lot of us run smaller businesses, not big corporations, and it's easy to not act like a business and try to do things all on our own, or just not be as professional as maybe what we should. So again, special thanks to Shannon. Appreciate her joining us on the show. Appreciate you listening. And that's it. I'm Todd Dykesheimer signing out. Make every day a Saturday. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Couple things before we go. Again, go on to our Facebook page, Pillars of Wealth. We'd love to have you on there. Go on to iTunes, give us a rating and review, and subscribe to the show. Also, don't forget, reach out to me if you want any help with potentially growing your business, and reach out to John Stiles to help you buy or sell real estate. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Have a fantastic the rest of the day. And as I say, make every day a Saturday.